So we looked at where this was coming from. The first key point to understand is this is not coming from transport. This is not coming from mobility. It's coming from two things. It came out of the Megacity Challenges study we did for Siemens in 2006. It's coming from global market forces. You ain't going to stop them. And one of the key forces is personalization of services. People want, because of complexity of lifestyle, they want services that are tailored to their lifestyle needs, not their mobility needs, their lifestyle needs. And to back up what these guys have said, you have to find out what they are. If you want to really get hold of MaaS or new mobility or complete mobility, call it what you like, you've got to start with a user. You've got to start, and more important, the non-user. You've got to start with the customer and understand where that's coming from. And then that's been driven by the smart technology market. It wasn't possible 10 years ago for every one of us to have our own personalized mobility package. It is now. And so both of these things are being driven. And so when I look at schemes, I was in Australia about a month ago and New Zealand talking about this. They're asking exactly the same questions as you, exactly the same questions as we're asking in Scotland and Europe. So it's got to be user-focused. It's got to be valued by the user. It's got to be designed. One thing I haven't heard today is, and I want to come back to this, is the whole idea of co-design and co-creation with the user. Because that's really key to all of this. And that comes from the product design industry. It comes from the kind of retailing industry, and we've got to learn how to do that. Door-to-door, reliable service, mode neutral, one account, all the stuff that you've been talking about. The other thing is, as Sampo said, this is a huge market, huge market. Take your pick from 13 trillion to, whatever, 900 billion transport systems catapult. 30 times bigger is, 10 times bigger, as Sampo was saying, than the telecoms industry itself. And that's just the basic. Why are people interested in this that are nothing to do with mobility? Because mobility is the key to every other service. Once you've got a mobility account, you can go anywhere you want, into health, into recreation, into education, and into leisure services, whatever. So it's a much, much bigger market, and it opens up a whole new series of revenue streams, new revenue streams, which we can use for mobility, as we were hearing about Vienna and upstream. It also brings operational savings if you do things smarter. In Australia, I was talking to the CEO of Bridge, who have now been bought by Transport Services, a transit company in Sydney. They've saved, by combining in a smart way real-time minibus services together with traditional bus services, they've saved 25% in their operational costs in the area that they trialed it in. That's unbelievable, just by doing it in a smarter way. And then all the other things that, the advantages that we can bring. So huge advantages in getting together on this. MaaS is here, as opposed to when I was saying in 2008, I think it's coming. You can either have it done to you. I think I said this last time I was talking to Cuta. You can either have it done to you, or you can try and shape it. And my advice always is you are in a great position to shape this in terms of transport agencies and transit agencies. I can't keep up with what's happening in the market. I'm not going to go through all of this stuff, but everyone's circling the wagons here. All the OEMs are doing partnerships all over the world, ride-hailing. Goldman Sachs report just last year said that the OEMs moving from selling cars into mobility, the market was 9 times bigger than what they're doing now. And every one of them are moving that way as well, with new partnerships being formed. But I suppose, having done this for 10 years, I've still got more questions than answers. And so we said in Scotland, what are we going to do to actually answer some of these questions? And the answer is that the only way you can do this is by doing it. Is by starting small, doing pilots. Somebody said it, I think, just before lunch, doing pilots and finding out some of the answers to these questions about the roles of various people on the value chain. I chucked that in. I'm not going to go over them. If you want to know about MaaS and the history of MaaS, these are all the reports, including a 3-year one I did for Scottish Enterprise, the Scottish Government. That'll tell you all you need to know about MaaS and the history of MaaS. So what we did 2 years ago was we formed this thing called MaaS Scotland, and we said, we need everyone. I think, was it somebody said a minute ago, you need, I think it was Sampo that said, you need everyone to do this. No one person can do it, no matter how big the company is. So we said, why don't we get everyone together in a network and just work together on these pilot projects from the public sector and private sector. So we formed MaaS Scotland. MaaS Global are a member. And this is what we wanted to do. We wanted to form a public-private network that could do these pilots and that could develop them and develop the models, the commercial models, and also the governance models. We wanted to share between all of the companies and the public sector what was happening around the world and build that ecosystem and do the pilots. There's now 66 members in the network, from large companies like Fujitsu to smaller companies, right down to companies like Hirecar, who are peer-to-peer car share in London, who, by the way, have got quite a lot of data. If anybody wants data, I can link you with Hirecar. And so it's a very powerful network that we've got. They're paying fees from £150 to small companies up to 3,000 for the larger companies. And so all the kind of systems that we need on the ecosystem, the companies represent all of these areas, and we need all of them. We're part of two industry bodies, Technology Scotland, that's the hardware side, we need them, like ticketing machines, and then Scotland-Ecosse, which is the software side, data analytics and APIs, and we need that as well. You need both. So we're backed by these two things. We launched in September 2017. The minister was there. That's me with the minister, the guy in the middle with the beard, the transport minister, who's showing great interest in this. We've had various workshops, and one of the interests that we're finding from around the world is that Scotland's a small place, 5.2, 5.3 million. Several large cities, notably Glasgow and Edinburgh, but a lot of rural areas and deep rural areas. So some of the questions we had, the same as the Netherlands government are doing just now, if you ought to have a look at what they're doing, is to say, okay, how do we make MaaS work in rural areas, low-income areas, suburban areas, island communities, cities? How do we stitch this together? And what's the model? What's the commercial model, the business model to do that? And we've looked at rural areas, and I think MaaS has got huge opportunities for rural areas. And that's what we're trying to test at the minute. The second conference is on the 26th of June, 2 weeks' time, if you want to come to Edinburgh for that. And the model that we have built is actually now being copied in Catalonia, in Barcelona, and we've got a workshop there on the 25th of June. There's discussions going on in Ontario and Quebec with doing the same in Canada and also in Australia, New Zealand. I want to spend a little bit of time left on the projects. These are the projects that we're currently looking at jointly with the Scottish Government and our companies. And all of the transport agencies and some of the transport operators are part of MaaS Scotland as well. So we're working very much with the public sector. In fact, in almost all of these instances, apart from one, it's the public sector agency, the regional council or the local authority that are the clients. So it looks at an island. There's a couple of islands there. It looks at rural areas. One of the things we're keen on is how do you bundle? So if you look at Stirling, which is a small city of about 90, 100,000, but it's got lots of little local villages, trying to run bus services, demand responsive services to these cost a lot of money, and they're not fit for purpose because they don't go at the time that people want, and they don't go where people want. So could we use peer-to-peer car share? Could we use taxi? Could we use minibus? Could we bundle these all together under something? And there's various models of what that something is, to actually pick and mix so that we do it efficiently. That may require a change of legislation in Scotland because we've got a deregulated system. So we're teasing that out. But we're also looking at a couple of projects up the top. They've started. The Mill project, which is the Mobility Integration Living Lab in Dundee, a city of about 200,000. They're out to tender for some of their services now, and they're looking citywide at everything from bike share, electric cars, taxi, bus, walking, etc. So that's an interesting thing to Google if you want. The Navigogo is an interesting one because it takes a different look at what the customer needs are, and it starts in a very real way from the customer. And what they did, they were funded by the Innovate UK, UK government research body, and they wanted to design a mobility package for 16 to 25-year-olds. So instead of having people like me trying to second guess what 16 and 25-year-olds need for their transport needs, they went out and asked them. Seems logical, doesn't it? So they formed groups, and they said, what do you need? And they picked 98, just under the 100. They got 98 young people from 16 to 25, and they told them a whole range of things. They needed a journey planner. Okay, they built in a journey planner. They needed payment system. They built in that. They needed a deal matcher, comparing that to that to that. So because none of them had any money, they needed a taxi splitter. I wouldn't have guessed that. So they go there in transit, but the clubs come out 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning. They get a taxi. There's always an argument about, you got off there, yeah, and you got off there, so you're due £5 and you're due £7. You know, always an argument. Could we have a taxi splitter? So built into Navigogo app, there's a taxi splitter. So everyone knows exactly what they pay. There's incentives. One of the things, when you understand the customer and you understand the values, this is how the retail market works, you can then incentivize people to nudge behavior in various ways, and you can offer value-added services, extra revenue streams. So there's a card called Young Scot card, and so they put £20 to incentivize them to use various things like bus, bike share, or whatever. But you can, once you've got that information, like any retailer, you can begin to get people to walk a bit more, to use transit a bit more, to do all sorts of stuff, nudging the market, because you understand what they want. They understand what they like. They like Nando's. Do you get Nando's here? No? Yeah? So 2 for the price of 1. If they don't move, 3 for the price of 1. So you nudge the market. It's how it, and there's real power to that as well. Now, it's a small scale. They've just done it with the first 98. I think there was about 2,000 journeys on the 98 young people. 75% more bus use after that initial phase of, I think it was 6 months. 39% less car use. 84% using Navigogo to pay for all their travel in terms of mobility. So it's very encouraging, and they're now trying to scale up for the next stage. They're now also working on an app for dementia sufferers, so people living with dementia and their carers. What do you need? And they're also looking for older people who can no longer drive, or other people who can no longer drive, called Car Freedom. So you can target various people with their needs, their lifestyle needs. Time's running out now, but we're looking, because it won't be a one-size-fits-all, even in Scotland. There's various models developing of even these 9 projects, so we need interoperability, not only through the UK, Scotland, but throughout Europe as well, like roaming in terms of your mobile phone. We need connectivity. You need a signal. In some of the rural areas, that's an issue, and we're talking to the Scottish government about that. And we need a roadmap. How do we get to where we want to get to, and how do we balance the value and needs of the customer with the value and needs of society? So me as a citizen and me as a customer, how do you bring the two together? I think you can, but it's going to take a lot of work. We did this paper, which I can send you for the minister, that says this is what you need to do. We need a joint working party between MaaS Scotland and the government, and I think that's going to happen. We need 1 to 2 million to kickstart some of these projects. That may happen. We're still in discussions about that. And we need some revenue funding for MaaS Scotland in the future. I've mentioned that this is replicating elsewhere. These are the kind of places that you ought to look at around the world. You've already heard from 2 guys in these areas. So I invite you all on the 26th of June to Edinburgh and come and taste the whiskey and hear about MaaS Scotland. And we don't know where this is going, but we're kind of holding on to see where it goes. We're working with both Upstream and MaaS Global. and trying to learn and share with you in this very new, very disruptive, but very exciting market that we're finding ourselves in, whether we like it or not. Thank you very much.